How are we? I guess everybody survived the storm that blew through Sunday night. That's a good thing. Got a little rain, but we also got a whole lot of wind. Um, Looks like city of Duncan got a little bit of damage too. This is March the 1st. Can you believe it's already March? Here we are. So March 1st, 2023, Wednesday night service here at Ray of Hope. I appreciate everybody being here this evening, and looking forward to finishing this message up, Lawlessness, the days of Noah, that has started a couple months ago. And we scheduled it a couple of times, and the last one, beginning of February, we had a snowstorm blow through. So I just kept thinking, I think the enemy is doing his best to keep any of us from finishing this up. So I'm going to just jump right in tonight, and I'm going to give just a little bit of a recap, and would say, for those that didn't hear the first part of this message, it is on the church's YouTube site, and I kind of wonder how much longer we're going to be able to have a YouTube site, because I see a whole lot of Christian organizations that are being taken down and taken off of YouTube. So at some point it will come down. But part one of this is on there, and I believe part two will be on there probably in a couple of days. So I want to back up just a little bit and just do a small recap of where we are, and we'll pick this up. So as you recall, we started in Matthew 24 and talked about Genesis chapter 6 as well. And in Matthew 24, we know that Jesus told us, because he gave us the illustration of the fig tree and told us we would know that we were in the season of the end times, because the disciples asked him a question about what will the end look like when you come back to get us. And he gave them a whole list of things, earthquakes, famines, wars, rumors of wars, lawlessness across the earth. I'm going to pick up in Matthew chapter 24 and beginning in verse 30 or 36. And it says, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For as in those days before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark." That sounds familiar, doesn't it? The world seems to be going on and on, eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, and kind of acting like there's really nothing wrong around them, and we want to get back to normal. And picking up in verse 39, it says, "And they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be." So we know out of that passage, people are eating, drinking, they're marrying, giving in marriage, and they did so until the flood came. And notice what Jesus told us. They did not understand what had happened to them until it actually happened. And we're going to have people, when the rapture happens, there are going to be people, when Jesus' second coming happens, there are going to be people that are marrying and living life and going on just like there are no problems, and all of a sudden the church is going to be gone, and there are going to be people left here having to suffer through the wrath of the Lamb. Now, going back to Genesis chapter 6, beginning in verse 5, it says, "Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. The Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land, from man to animals, to creeping things, and to birds of the sky. For I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord." Picking up in verse 11, "Now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. God looked on the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth." And this word here, corrupt, in the Hebrew is shalkoth, and it means to decay or ruin or to destroy. So we know as God looked at the earth, it was decaying, it was being ruined, and it was being destroyed because of man. And to think that God was grieved in his heart that he even created man because of what he saw when he looked down there. And then in verse 13, he says, "Then God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. And behold, I am about to destroy them with the earth." And then in verses 11 through 13, he gives the instructions on how to build the ark. And this word violence in the Hebrew, and you see it up in verse 11, you see it again in verse 13, it's the Hebrew word ka, mas, and it means by implication a wrong or an unjust gain, cruelty, false or an injustice or unrighteousness. And I look around the world today, and there's a whole bunch of that going on. I believe that we are living right in the midst of a lot of those things there. Implication wrong. It's unjust gain. I mean, I see people all the time that are getting gain, and it's unjust the way that they've gotten that. And people are cruel today. There's a lot of falsity, a lot of injustice, and a lot of unrighteousness that's going on in our world and around us. And I'm going to get into that here in just a couple of minutes. But out of these passages here in Genesis chapter 6, that we learn of the days of Noah, we understand that the sons of God, that they were marrying whoever they wanted to. And because of that, God punished them, and he limited their days to 120 years. The wickedness on the earth was great, and the whole earth was corrupt, and the thoughts of man were on evil continually. God was grieved that he created man, and that I get hung up on that frequently. It grieved God's heart, and he wanted to blot out man. How bad do we have to be that God regrets creating us? His creation, his crown jewel that he's looking at on earth, it grieved him in his heart that he even made us. Now, we know this. Noah found favor in his eyes, and he was the only one on the earth at that time that was righteous. And the verse said Noah, quote, walked with God. The earth was corrupt and filled with violence, and all flesh corrupted their way. Now, we know that God destroyed the earth with a flood, but when he destroyed the earth with a flood, what did he do? He provided a way out for Noah and Noah's family, and it was because of the righteousness of Noah that he did this. And we know our righteousness comes from where? It comes from Christ. And when God looks down and he sees one of us, he sees Christ. He sees the righteousness of Jesus Christ. It's not because of me. It's not because of anything I've done. It's not because of anything that I can do. It's because of the blood of Jesus Christ that I have any righteousness in me whatsoever. Now, we're going to look at one last verse, and then we're going to jump into and really take a look at where we are in this world today. And that last verse is in Matthew 24, verse 12. And it says, because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will grow cold. Now, in this context, lawlessness is in the Greek anomia, and it literally means wickedness or iniquity. So remember that as we talk about lawlessness, we're talking about an inequity or we're talking about wickedness. And it implies a condition of having no law. So can you imagine what the streets in the United States or the streets in any country would look like if there were no rules, no law? We are a nation that's ruled by laws, and we know our nation was founded on the rule of law, and it was founded on the gospel of Jesus Christ, and it's only because of those things that our nation has done so well and has flourished over the years. Now, you see in this verse also, Jesus saying that people's love is going to grow cold, and as I studied for this message, that really stood out to me this time. And as I took a look at that, the Greek in that is sucho, and it means to breathe or blow, or to cool by blowing. And we look at this and we know there's another translation out of the Bible that said people's hearts will wax cold in those days. So you think about it like this. You think about this candle and you think about the wax and how you blow a cool breath across that wax or you blow out the flame. What does it do to it? That wax begins to get hard. And that wax hardens the more cold air that's put on it. The cooler it gets, the harder it gets. And I think that's what this verse is saying here in verse 12. As the lawlessness is increasing, most people's love is going to grow cold. In other words, our hearts are going to continue getting harder and harder and harder all the time. And we know how many times have we seen somebody being assaulted or attacked or something like that. And what do people do today? They pull out their cell phone and they just take a video of it. In fact, I saw a video just a couple of days ago that really stunned me. And I'll tell you, because of my job, it's hard to stun me anymore. But this was in St. Louis, and there was a homeless gentleman sitting on the curb, major street right in front of him. And he was in there just kind of minding his own business, and you can see the buildings across the street. And there's a guy videoing this incident from inside another building. And he's got his camera on, and you can hear him talking about it and describing what's going on. There's another man standing outside who's fiddling around with a little object. What turns out that it's a gun. And he fiddles around with it for a little while, and he eventually pulls a magazine out of his pocket, puts it in the gun, racks around, puts it in there, and points it right at this homeless man and starts pulling the trigger. Kills him right there, and this is broad daylight. in the middle of the day, while people are inside a business watching this happen, our love is growing cold. Our hearts are hard when we can see something like that and nobody is willing to take action and try to stop something like that. There's nothing else we can deduct out of that except to say our hearts are growing cold. So, as we look at this part of the message, and whether we're in the days of Noah, I want you to think about this. God said in Genesis 6:6, the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. We also know that Hebrews 13:8 tells us that the Lord is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So if God was grieved then, I think he's grieved today because of what he's seen all over the earth and what is going on here. So we need to keep that thought in our mind. So, and to give you a couple little asterisks here, I'm not even going to begin to be able to touch where we are as a society or what's going on in the world today. It's going to be a random sample just to give you an idea of what is going on. There's way too much that's going on, way too much around the world that we're going to ever be able to get to all of it. And it's just a note to say we are sliding into a place where we are living in days that were like the days in Noah's age. And right now what I believe the difference is this. It's the church. Because we talked just a minute ago, it's Jesus and his righteousness that makes me righteous. And when God looks on the earth, he sees righteous people. He sees the church. Can you imagine what this world is going to look like, or what it would look like right this very minute if God were to completely remove the church? There would be nobody left that was righteous, not even one. It would be horrific. And I don't even know that we could I don't know that we could describe it right now. So this church, I think what we have to do tonight is we have to continue being the restraining force that's holding back this evil. We have to continue to pray. And quite frankly, we have to pray like we've never prayed before. And it is time. We have to get on our knees, and we have to be what we have been called to be. And that's, Paul told us, the war that we're in is a spiritual war. And our weapons are not of this world. Our weapons are not guns. Our weapons are not knives. Our weapons are not fists or anything else. Our weapons are spiritual, and we need to be on our knees and fighting this battle that way. And we know that Jesus scares the enemy, right? I know I've had a couple of incidents in my life. I won't describe them tonight, but I know there have been a couple of times I've just it took everything in me to get the name of Jesus out of my mouth. And in an instant, there was relief. And we know that all you got to do is get the name of Jesus out in the presence of the enemy, and he's going to take off and flee. So let's take a look at what's going on around the world. We know that violence is escalating, and you can see this in this first slide that's going to come up. This is in the United States of America from 2011 to 2020. And you can see our violent crime rate is sliding up. It's not going in the right direction. You can see about 2014 we had a massive dip. It climbs in 2016, comes off, and it stops. I couldn't find another chart for 21 and 22, but I can assure you 21 and 22 are going to continue the upward trend. Now, I hear all the time, well, what about Oklahoma? We're not that bad here in Oklahoma, okay? Well, the next slide is going to show you. Oklahoma is the blue, and the bottom on that graph is the national average. So we're way ahead of everybody else, and I guess we're doing our part to see that violent crime does well here in the United States. Back a couple of months ago during the election cycle, there was a candidate for the governor's office who brought up that, Oklahoma's crime rate was higher than that of New York or California, and it really kind of turned into a big deal. And Oklahoma's not as bad as those two states. Well, that was fact-checked, if you will, by several different groups. And as you can see, this is a News 9 article. This is an Oklahoma City station that did it. And so, FBI and CDC confirmed that Oklahoma's violent crime rate is higher than that of California or New York. Which, when I saw that, when I realized that, I kind of thought, oh man, that's not good. Here we are. We're supposed to be the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, and we're not any better than the two states that we call liberal all the time. So this next slide is going to show you. It shows you globally where we are compared to the rest of the world. And you can see the United States there. We're green. Now we're not red, and you can see down into Mexico and part of South America and parts of Africa where it's the worst. But the United States, we're climbing up that chart fairly quickly. Now, Um, the suicide rate in this country, it's way up. I've seen it. You can see the United States right there. We're red, bright red. We're not the worst country as far as suicides go, but I'll tell you, in my job, in the 4 counties that I have, when somebody dies and there's an autopsy performed, I get a copy of that autopsy for review. In the last couple of years, the suicides and overdoses have all but gone through the roof. It's sad. I sat in my office a couple of years ago. I think it might have been on Christmas Eve. I had to go in and get a couple things done that morning. And I went in and cleaned out my inbox where all these ME's reports were. And I couldn't help. I found myself with tears in my eyes because of all the suicides and the overdoses. It was just, it broke my heart to think that people had that much, or they had given up that so much that they would take their own life. I mean, it was one right after another. We're also seeing attacks on peace officers go up, and it's going through the roof. And we'll get a couple of articles here. And I would point you back to Romans chapter 13. And we know in Romans chapter 13, Paul tells us that we're to be in submission to the governing authorities. And he tells us that these law enforcement officers and government officials, that they're here to be God's hands and feet for justice in this life. So when you attack an officer, you're attacking God, because there is a calling. I know I have a calling, and the officers that I talk to, I can guarantee you every single one of them will tell you the same thing. I'm a police officer because I have a calling to do it. And there's a lot of them that will make a whole lot more money outside of law enforcement, but they do it because they've been called to do that. They've been called to protect their community. So you see this article here, cause and effect, why attacks on officers appear to be increasing. The next slide, assaults on police officers increased dramatically. And this is in the United States. This isn't another country. This is here in our own country. And then the next one is going to be a Fox News article, and this is January 15th of 2023. 2022 saw a disturbing increase in law enforcement fatalities. A culture of lawlessness has gripped the country. 64 officers killed in the line of duty due to firearms. And that's only officers that were killed in the line of duty because of a gunshot, because they've been shot. And did you catch that? A culture of what? A culture of lawlessness has gripped the country. And you look at this and you go, Fox News, I guess Fox News is reading the Bible too, because we're talking about lawlessness in our own country. I mean, the headlines are being ripped right out of the Bible right now, right before our eyes. And I would say, this stuff, you just can't make this up. So this next slide, and you go, well, can this happen in our own backyard? Yes. 2 Oklahoma officers shot. This happened in Grady County in 2017. There was a man who was a subject of a rape investigation, and the officers went and got a search warrant. They went to his house, and they had their tactical team go in so that they could make entry to the house. And thank you, Lord, that they had the tactical team there, because they had the gear on. If it would have been one of the detectives that just went to the door to try to get in, that detective would have died that day. And as they had the officers lined up, and you had an officer with a battering ram at the door, and this officer is 6'5" and weighs about 320 pounds and is hitting this door as hard as anything I've ever seen, and the door won't budge. The head of the supervisor of that TAC team then takes his arm and pushes the door in. As the officer with the battering ram peels away, the gunshots start. It's a high-powered rifle, and it was just one round right after another. This supervisor took one bullet to the arm, and it basically destroyed his arm. And then he took another one that hit him right here in his helmet, and it grazed around the outside of his head and went through his ear. And I've told him a couple of times, God has you here for a reason. That bullet not going right through your skull is a miracle in and of itself. And he's alive today, and he serves the Lord and is a great guy. But to sit there and to see what happened with that in Chickasha, America, I'll never forget the phone call, because it was a Sunday. I had one of my investigators call me, and he was out there as all this shooting started, and I could tell something was wrong. I mean, as soon as I got onto the phone with him, and his voice, I'd never heard it like that, and I will never forget it either. And we took off, went up there, prosecuted the guy. Now, he'll never get out of prison, which is a good thing, but those officers don't deserve that, and that's what we're starting to see in law enforcement. So the next thing I'm going to take a look at is the mass shootings. And understand when I'm talking about a mass shooting, and it's real hard to find statistics on this because everybody defines a mass shooting a little bit different. Some of them it's 3, some of them it's 4, some of them it's 5 people who have been injured. Some of them include the shooter, some of them don't include the shooter. Some of them only want to talk about mass shootings when somebody has died. So as we look at this, understand that it's kind of hard to define, and what I did was try to define it as 4 or more that are injured or killed, and just took those statistics and moved on. So the first slide here is going to show you 2000 to 2013. There were 100, as you can see, there are 160 incidents with 1,043 injuries. That includes deaths and injuries. So in that 14-year time frame, there were 160 incidents. Now we're going to jump to 2017. So the next slide is going to show 17 to 2021, and you see this curve going up, and there's a 33% increase from 19 to 2020, and then there's a 52% increase between 2020 and 2021. Now, the next one is disturbing because we're going to take a look at 2022. In 2022, there were 648 mass shootings in the United States alone. And I want to make something clear here. I am by no means going to stand up here and argue against somebody's right to have a firearm. I'll never do that. And we'll do whatever I can to make sure that I defend that in any way. We're looking at this because this is what is going on in our country. Those 648 mass shootings, 672 people died. 3,370 people were shot. That's a lot of people. And to think where we were to where we are and where we are going, quite frankly, is troubling. Now, how is 2023 looking? Well, you're not going to like it because it's worse than 2022. January 5th of 2023, Southern Utah man kills his wife, 5 kids, his mother-in-law, and then turns a gun on himself. There are 8 people that died there. January 16th of 2023, 6 family members died. And I believe there was an infant that was shot in that one. January 28th, 2023, the 4th mass shooting in California in one weekend. 2023 mass shootings for the year, and as you see this is going to be a statistic for 1 month. This is January and January alone. And that blew my mind when I found that at the end of last month. There were 40 mass shootings across the United States. And that put 2023 on the pace. If you do the math on that, that puts you at about, 480-ish mass shootings across the country. So that's going to blow 2022 completely out of the water. And out of this, as we look at this, there were 73 people in January who were killed in these mass shootings, 165 injured. There were 3 mass shootings in South Florida, 9 shot in Miami Gardens on New Year's Day, 10 shot in a restaurant. And then a few days later, there was 1 killed and 3 injured in Homestead on the 15th of January. And then we start looking at February 20th of 2023. In 3 days, 10 mass shootings with more than 50 victims. And it will show you that was the worst weekend of 2023. And in that weekend, there were 9 shot in Georgia at a gas station, 6 killed in Mississippi, 11 shot in Memphis, 5 shot on a Chicago expressway. And then you look at February the 15th, and this is an article of February 15th, so it's not going to count everything that happened from the 15th of February to today, which is March the 1st. And at that point, there had been 71 mass shootings in the United States in just 6 weeks. And I look at this and go, we've got a problem. Obviously, we have a problem. It's not a gun problem. It's not an object problem. It's a heart problem, period. This country has a major heart problem, and I have told people that over and over and over again. And of course, I always get this crazy look when I bring that up in one of my meetings. We don't need to do anything with any of the weapons. We don't need to because if we get rid of guns, somebody's just going to pick something else up. If it's not a gun, it's going to be a knife. If it's not a knife, it's going to be a club. I think we can go back to Genesis and talk about Cain and Abel, and even way back in the very beginning, it started. It's a problem with the heart, and there's only one way that you can fix that problem in the heart, and that's with Jesus Christ. And you see this next slide, June 9th, 2021, and it says U.S. has a gun problem, but China has a knife problem. Well, okay, so China has taken all the guns away from their people, but you still have mass stabbings. and it's still a threat in China, and the Chinese are doing this, and this is going on over there. Again, it's a heart problem. And then here in Oklahoma City, the pink parrot just over the weekend, we were talking that before service. There were 8 people that were injured, including stabbings in Oklahoma City over the weekend. Now, what does it look like around the rest of the world? And I'll go through these fairly quickly. In January of 2023, the Pope moved forward with his Africa visit despite violence in the Congo. And I'm going to talk about Africa a little more here in just a second. May 28th article of 2013, violence in Europe left people fearful. And this is even going back 10 years. It's something that is building and continuing to build. The next one, 2023, a Wall Street Journal article, the Israel-Palestinian conflict is violent. And I think everybody in here understands that, and we all know that, right? And then in February 27th of 2023, never like this before, this is just 2 days ago, never like this before, settler violence in the West Bank escalates, retaliatory rampage in Palestinian village likened to Kristallnacht in Hawara with 1 dead and 350 injured. September 10th, 2019 from Business Insider, and this is in Latin America, 400 murders a day. And the title of the article is 10 Reasons Why Latin America is the World's Most Violent Place. They're having 146,000 homicides per year. Latin America is 8% of the world's population and have over 1/3 of all the homicides in the entire world. So it's not just the United States. This is going on everywhere. January 29th, 2023, a Reuters article, Peru's political crisis continues with violence in Lima. February 1, 2023, the Daily Star, gunman kills 8 at a birthday party in South Africa. And I'm going to tell you, church, we need to be praying over South Africa because they're on the verge of a civil war. They are right on the verge of a civil war, and their society is collapsing because of the rolling blackouts. And it's going to be a problem, and I can see that spreading around and across the world. Now, some of the other stuff that I've seen in just the last couple of weeks, we talked about the St. Louis issue just a little bit ago. Just this morning, there was an active shooter with multiple police officers shot in St. Louis. The U.S. State Department in February of this year warned citizens to avoid parts of Mexico over the ongoing violence and the kidnappings. February 11th, videos of violent protests in France. End of January 2023 in Alice Springs, Australia, violent protests there. This afternoon in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, there was an active shooter that shot 4 people. One of them is dead, and that was in 2 separate locations. And then we've got all this crazy stuff going on around us with food processing plants, train derailments, and all the other stuff. It's enough to rattle somebody if you don't have Jesus in your heart. I look at this and I go, yeah, this is disturbing, but I got Christ in my heart because I know where I'm going. And the more that I see this, and maybe I'm a little crazy, but I'll take that. But I know where I'm going, and I know Jesus is coming to get me, because every time I see a little bit more of this, I go, I'm just one step closer to Jesus coming back and taking me home. And quite frankly, I am ready. February 20th of 2023, Vladimir Zelensky, and I don't know why it is he thinks that he has the authority to say some of the things that he said, but he has said if China allies itself with Russia, there will be World War III. Did you hear that? If the Chinese align themselves with Russia, we're going to have World War III. What does he know that we don't? And I think that's crazy to think that, well, okay, all the European nations and the United States, we're supplying the Ukrainians, and we need to be praying for all of them there. And I'm not going to get into the politics of all of it, but Zelensky, just in the last couple of days, came out and said, if the United States doesn't continue supplying and World War III breaks out, your sons are going to be over here dying in Europe for our cause. I don't want to see that. I've got 2 kids, 2 boys that are that age, and I don't want to see it. I don't want to see them go over there. And I think one of the problems that we have now in this world is we just simply don't value life. And when we don't value life, and we've seen over the last how many years, how many abortions that have happened. It's one right after another, on and on and on. And because We have seen that. We've seen the homicides. We've seen the violent crime. We've seen our hearts grow cold. It's time, and I'm going to get into it as we end. It's time for revival. And as Roe v. Wade was reversed, and praise God it was reversed, we're starting to see kids, babies around the nation that are left somewhere because somebody can't get an abortion, so they'll just drop the baby off. And I would encourage anybody within the sound of my voice, there is it's a safe haven baby box, and you can go look this up on the internet. And the story of this lady that came up with this idea is unbelievable because she was abandoned. She was supposed to be aborted when she was little, but she wasn't, and she came up with this idea, and it's called Safe Haven Baby Box. And what this idea is they take a box and they put it in the wall of a fire department, and on the outside somebody can take their child and put the child in that box, close the door, push a button, they walk off, and a firefighter is notified immediately, and within just a couple of minutes they have that child in their hands. And that child gets to live, and that child's going to go to a home where somebody wants that child. Gina Flesher and Kimberla Treat, and everybody in here knows Kimberla, with Karis, they're trying to get one in Duncan. And I would encourage you, talk to Gina, talk to Kimberla. They need the money to get that thing done. And it's important. It's something that needs to be done. Now, I'm going to talk just shortly about what I think some of the reasons why we're seeing so much violence in the United States, so much violence in the state of Oklahoma. And I've said this many, many times, and that is the drug trade is absolutely driving our violent crime rate. The drugs are everywhere, and I think everybody in here realizes that, and everybody in here knows that. And I'll point you to Revelation chapter 9, verses 20 and 21. It says this: "The rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of the works of their hands, so as not to worship demons and the idols of gold and of silver and of brass and of stone and wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. And they did not repent of their murders, nor of their sorceries," and take note of that word, "nor of their immorality, nor of their thefts." That word sorceries, and I've heard pastor teach on this a couple of times, and that word sorceries in the Greek is pharmakeia, and it can mean one of two things. It can mean medication, the use or administering of drugs, and it can also mean sorcery or magical arts. And I look at that and go, oh, well, we've hit both of those with that one word, because we're seeing the use and the sale of drugs like I never imagined. And we're seeing sorceries, and we're seeing the magic arts all over, just even in our community. I did a message on that not long ago and had somebody catch me after it was over, or a couple of days after it was over, so they picked it up and went in. They'd gone into a house to do some work for some folks, and they're walking through the house. Said, these are great folks, liked them, and I get to walking through there and listen to your message, and walked into one of the back rooms, and there are the tarot cards and a Ouija board and all this other stuff. He said, I would have never known what it was unless I'd listened to that. That stuff is everywhere, and you can walk into convenience stores, you can walk into stores all over Duncan, all over Lawton right now, and run into them. And I know Marla and I have turned around and left stores when we've seen that, and I would encourage you to do the same. And if somebody asks you why you're leaving, you need to tell them, because you have the devil's toys sitting on your shelf, and we're not going to take part in it, and we're not going to support it. So understand that is everywhere. So what we're seeing right now, and I think is something that happened back in 2016 here in the state of Oklahoma, and we passed State Question 780, and we made all drugs a misdemeanor. Doesn't matter what it is, fentanyl, heroin, meth, PCP, you name it. It's a misdemeanor for all time. And you can have one, you can have 100, it doesn't matter. It's a misdemeanor every single time. And I'll tell you, in my experience, somebody is facing a misdemeanor, they don't care. And there is no fear of a misdemeanor whatsoever. We also took our theft threshold and require $1,000 of theft before we can have a felony offense. Well, and I know people, we'll point back at California again and go, okay, well, California, they've done some kind of crazy stuff. Washington and Oregon, they've done some kind of crazy stuff with their laws. We've done the same thing, and our laws are actually more liberal with respect to the drugs and the theft than theirs are. In California, it's $950 of theft, and it's a felony. Here, it's $1,000. And I think it's going to take longer to get to 1,000 here than it's going to take to get to 950 out there. But you look at this and go, well, we watched what California did, and we're doing the same thing and we expect a different result. And that's the definition of insanity. And that's exactly what's going on. And there are companies coming in and spending millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And what they're doing is they're ruining and destroying the state of Oklahoma. And I will tell you, and I think it's intentional. I'm convinced it's intentional. Now, this next slide in the United States, drug death, we lead the world. We're number one in drug deaths in the United States. And it's not even close. Canada is number 2, and it's 8.7 per 100,000 there. It's 21.3 per 100,000 here. And we're not even close. We have people dying all the time, and I would venture guess we could probably go through this room tonight and find people in here who know somebody who has overdosed. I had an uncle when I was 17, almost 18, who overdosed. A long time ago, just gotten out of high school, and that stuck with me. And I will tell you, some people look at me and go, you're kind of passionate about taking the drugs off the street. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I know it's killing people. I had a family member that died because of it. And it's killing kids all across this country. This next slide that you're going to see, this is Trixie. Trixie is a good girl, and you see the little black packages there next to her. The OBN, which is the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, received a tip. This is in Grady County. Received a tip that this vehicle was going to be traveling through the county. So they went out, they found a reason to stop it. They stopped it. Trixie did her thing, alerted on the car. They got into the truck, and that's what they found. That right there is fentanyl. It's 26.8 pounds of fentanyl. And this next slide you're going to see is what I refer to as a lethality calculation. So, and I don't know how well you can see that, but 2 milligrams of fentanyl, powdered fentanyl, will kill you. That 26.8 pounds of fentanyl that was taken off the street in Grady County, and this is just a few months ago, will kill 6.1 million people. Think about that, 6.1 million people. That's almost the state of Oklahoma twice, and that will wipe out the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. This stuff is everywhere. And here we are. And it came up tonight in the back, and here we are talking about an election. It's next Tuesday. I'm going to encourage everybody to go vote. Tuesday. Legalization of marijuana is on the ballot. And I'm just going to leave it at that. If you want my hard opinion about it, catch me after service. I'll be more than happy to give it to you. But go vote, people. We've got to stand up. We have got to stand up and take a stand, because it is killing this country. It is killing our kids. I have seen more kids with a psychosis because of the marijuana that they're smoking. And we continue to talk about kids and how they're out of control. A lot of them are smoking marijuana, and I would venture a guess there's probably a lot of people in here who have heard that, their kid comes home, and I've had this happen with all of mine. My daughter hadn't told me yet, but Dad, I was in the bathroom, and it smelled like marijuana. That's inside the school. It's not outside the school, that's inside the school. And the THC levels in it are so high, it's causing the psychosis. There's a psychologist. I was in a meeting Friday afternoon, and the psychologist brought it up. I brought it up, and she replied and said, I am really glad. We're in a room full of the directors of multiple state agencies. She said, I'm glad you brought that up, because what we're seeing in Oklahoma right now is unbelievable, and that THC content is destroying kids' brains. And we've got to do something about it. And we see this reform being done all over the country, and we're doing it in the name of reducing mass incarceration, but it's not. It's not helping. It's making things worse. And I could literally spend 2 or 3 hours on that and say, if you don't believe me, go turn on the news, go turn on social media. You're going to see the violence and all of this that's going on. Locally, our violent crime is going up. In the last couple of years, I've seen more child molestations, more child porn than I ever cared to see in my entire lifetime. And it's one case right after another, and that's just a drop in the bucket, not to even mention the murders. So I think the point tonight is this. The world's heading down this same path it's headed down I don't know how many times over the years. We're heading right back to the same place that we were in the days of Noah, and I think we're pretty much there now. The difference being the church is still here, like we talked about a little bit ago. And there are people here who still have a righteousness. And the question, I've heard this question more in the last little bit, especially this year, and that is Jesus going to return soon than I have probably in a whole bunch of years combined before now? And I think there's a belief, and I think people are excited to see him return. And I'll tell you, some of the people that are excited about it, I kind of wonder, are you really that excited about it? I mean, are you confident that when he does return, he comes back to get his church, that he's going to take you with him? Because he's not coming back for a spotted bride. And I would say, I think he's coming back soon, and I think the signs all point to that. And as we talk about signs, one of the things that I didn't talk about in any of this, I didn't really talk about earthquakes, and we know we had a massive earthquake in Turkey. And I think a statistic that I saw said there were like 7,700 earthquakes in that area around that time frame. So that they're getting more frequent, and they're becoming bigger, and it's not going to do anything but get, they're going to become closer and closer together, and they're going to become more frequent. So we didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about famines. We didn't talk about the pestilence. And I didn't talk about the tension between the United States and China and Russia. Maybe just a little bit. But we're hearing wars and rumors of wars everywhere. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago who has a son that's 40 years old, and his son's best friend's in the military. And he was deployed and shipped to, he was being shipped to Africa. I said, well, what's going on in Africa? Why are you going to Africa? I mean, there's not any wars going on there. He said, well, what you don't know and what the news is not telling you is the United States is actively involved in 14 wars around the world. How many of you heard that on the news? Nobody. And it kind of blew me away to hear 14 wars that we're involved in and nobody's talking about it. Which means we have soldiers going overseas and dying every single day. And I think we continue hearing more and more talk about, well, we're right on the verge of World War III. And it almost seems like that's what we want. Like, when I don't want it. I don't want it all. I want peacetime. I want my kids to grow up in a peaceful world. And I'll also note that we didn't talk about the technology that we have that is absolutely capable of tracking every man, woman, and child in this world. At no point in history have we ever had that. And, I know over the years, in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, I mean, there's always been, okay, well, now's the time Jesus is coming back. Well, we've never really had what we have now. Does it mean he's coming back right this very moment? No. It may be another year, it may be another decade, it may be another century. I don't know, but certainly as I look at that fig tree and know when the fruit's going to come off of that tree, I look around and see the signs that Jesus told about, and I think those signs are all around us right now. And we need to get serious about the master's business. Because if you'll remember, after chapter 24, and Jesus comes to the end of that, and I'm going to get to the end of chapter 24 here in just a second at verse 42 if you want to turn there. But after that, he started telling parables. He told the parable of the fig tree, and then he told the parable of the 10 virgins, and he told the parable of the talents, and then he talked about the judgment. And I think what he was telling us at that point was, yes, I'm coming back, and nobody knows the date, the hour, or the time. Only the Father knows that, not even the Son. But what you need to do is you need to be busy about the master's business. You do need to look up, because we all know our redemption draws near, but we need to be about his business. And that's what the church is here to do. We need to take as many people with us as we possibly can. And just like the parable of the virgins, there were some of them that were left behind because they didn't have the oil for the lamps, right? I don't want to get caught off guard, eating, drinking, marrying, or giving in marriage, and all of a sudden the master's come and he's gone. And I missed it because I wasn't ready. And that's the thing I think the church needs to be. We need to be ready. We need to challenge one another. And, I would say I think our world changed drastically in 2020, and I don't think we're going back. And we have a lot of people in this world today that are living on this hope that things are going to get better. And they're going to get better, and things are going to go back to the way they were before 2020. And I don't want to be a pessimist, but I don't think they're going to. I don't think things are going back. And I've had those conversations with people recently saying, 2020, just teachers, superintendents, people in my office, law enforcement, legislators. 2020, COVID, things changed. And it didn't change for the better. So Matthew 24, beginning in verse 42, it says this: Therefore be on the alert, for you do not know which day your Lord is coming. But be sure of this, that if the head of the house had known at what time of the night the thief was coming, he would have been on the alert and would not have allowed his house to be broken into. For this reason, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour when you do not think he will. Who then is the faithful and sensible slave whom his master put in charge of his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that slave whom his master finds so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, that he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But if that evil slave says in his heart, my master is not coming for a long time, and begins to beat his fellow slaves and eat and drink with drunkards, the master of that slave will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour which he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Church, tonight I don't think any of us want to be in that category of that wicked servant. We don't, because that wicked servant, when he goes and he's not following the master's instructions and he's not doing what the master called him to do and is doing the exact opposite of it, that wicked servant's going to get to spend eternity in the lake of fire. And I can assure you that's not a place that any of us even want to think about, much less go. So as Jesus returns for his bride, and I look at this, and I've been thinking about this today, I want to see the church today in this last hour stand up and be the bride that he deserves. Not a spotted bride, not a bride that's stained by the world, because I see too often anymore things of the world creeping into the church. And I think we could go through all of the ministers around the nation that are doing podcasts and this and that, and they give you this warm, fuzzy feeling and everything's great, but it's nothing more than just a little pep talk, and that's it. True repentance changes hearts. True repentance will cause us to be on our face. And I think it's time in our community. I talked about this morning at a prayer breakfast we had. I think in our community we desperately need revival. But we also know this. If we're going to have that, it's going to take some people at these altars. It's going to take some people at their altar, in their home, in their quiet place, on their face, repenting and turning away from their wickedness. We have to get desperate to the point nothing else will do. And that's where we are today. 2 Chronicles 7:13-15 says this, if I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, and my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. Psalm 85, beginning in verse 4, says, restore us, O God of our salvation, and cause your indignation toward us to cease. Will you be angry with us forever? Will you prolong your anger to all generations? Will you not yourself revive us again, that your people may rejoice in you? Show us your loving kindness, O Lord, and grant us your salvation. I think the key to the revival is this. It's God's people. It's not the world. These two verses, these two passages from 2 Chronicles and Psalm, it doesn't say if people in the world will stop their sin and turn towards me, then I'll do some things. He talks about my people. If my people will do this, I will heal your land. It says the same thing in Psalm 85. Will you be angry with us, the righteous? Are you going to be angry with all of us forever? And I look at this at times and go, I would be the first one to stand here and say this. I'm not worthy of standing in his presence. I'm not worthy to stand here tonight and bring this message to you. I feel like Paul when Paul said, I am the chief sinner of all. And there are times it breaks my heart to think that I have done something that would offend the Almighty. And I think that's exactly where the church has been. And when I say the church, I'm talking about the church, the American church. We're not doing what we should. We wouldn't have all these statistics and we wouldn't have all these stories that I've talked about tonight and all these articles that I've talked about tonight if the church were out doing what it was supposed to do. And that is standing up in the culture and influencing the culture instead of the culture influencing us. So tonight, it's a challenge to me, and I'm challenging me, and I'm going to challenge the church tonight as well. We've got to do better, and we've got to do things that are not going to offend the Creator. And that's going to mean some change in all of our hearts and all of our lives. Matthew Henry put it this way. It's easy to be religious when religion is in fashion, but it is an evidence of strong faith and resolution to swim against the stream to heaven and to appear for God when no one else appears for him. So Noah did, and it is upon record to his immortal honor. So the question I think that we all have to ask ourselves tonight is this: are we going to have our names etched in eternity as did Noah? And Noah was the righteous one and took a stand for God when Noah was the only one that was righteous. And I'll tell you, standing up for God sometimes in the culture is not easy. The culture is going to come after you. The culture is going to come after this church. I can guarantee you that's going to happen if we continue to take a biblical stand and say the transgender movement is wrong, same-sex marriage is wrong, all of this stuff. We can go through it, all of it. It's wrong, and it's an offense to God Almighty. The world's going to come after us, and that's fine. Let them come after us, because when we get persecuted, guess what happens? We're going to blow the walls out of this church. In fact, I think instead of having a conversation about building another West Annex, we're going to have a conversation about kicking these walls out because we need more room in our sanctuary. How great would that be? To see that many people that we had to kick the walls out and build a bigger sanctuary. So tonight, I'm going to ask you, are you going to be there? Are you going to be that Noah, or are you going to be the one that allows your name to get etched in eternity, who was like the world, marrying and giving in marriage and carrying on just like the world does, day in and day out? And this last slide that I have tonight says this: the greatest miracle that God can do today is to take an unholy man out of an unholy world and make him holy, then put him back into that unholy world and keep him holy in it. Think about that. That's what God can do for everybody in the sanctuary tonight. Everybody within the sound of my voice. God can take us and clean us. Our job is not to go out and clean somebody up and then bring them into the church. Our job is to bring them into the church, hook them, bring them in here, let the Holy Spirit deal with them, and then God will clean them up after that. I've heard it analogized this way in the past. I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to go out and catch this fish. I'm not going to clean the fish. I'm going to take the fish to somebody else that knows how to clean it, because I don't want to mess with it. That's what we need to do. We need to be fishers of men and bring them into the church. And there is a standard inside the church that we're not going to compromise. But we need to bring the people here. We need to be loving. We need to have open arms. And I'll tell you right now, and Pastor and I were talking about it right before we got started, and that is the love that you see inside this church. It's amazing. I've attended a bunch of churches over the years for one service or one thing or another. I've never seen the love that I've seen in this church that people have for each other. It's unbelievable. You should feel at home here. So I close with this. My decision tonight is this: as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Church, stand with me and we'll pray together. Father, thank you for this evening, and thank you for all that you've done for us, Lord. You've done so much for each one of us, Father, and I know that as I stand here tonight, I, Lord, am nothing but a worm, and Lord, I know that the things that I do are not pleasing to you at times, and Lord, I just ask that you would forgive me for that, and Father, that you would open my heart, and that you would burn inside of my life, Father, that the only thing that matters, Lord, is your word and seeing people come to you. And Father, I'd ask that you would take that fire and that you would set all of us on fire. Fathers, we know we need revival, and Father, I had to ask that tonight, Lord, that you would just put that urge and that desire in each one of us, Father, to get on our hands and to get on our knees and on our face and to repent and turn away from the things that this nation has done and turn away from the things that we've done, and Lord, to ask you to help us to live a holy life. And Father, I'd ask that the Spirit would be around each one of us. And each time one of us goes to do something that's not pleasing to you, Father, I'd ask that the Spirit would immediately, Lord, intervene and help us to make right what we've done wrong. And Father, I'd ask tonight that we would be such an example to our community, that would be such an example to the people that we're around, that they would understand there's something different about us and that they have to have that same thing in their lives. Lord, that you would be here, and I'd ask that you would pack this place, Father, as we know we're in these last days, Lord. We're in these days that look like the days that when Noah was here, and Lord, I'd ask that you would keep each one of us in your hands, Father, that you would protect us, and that you would give us a boldness that we've never had before, Father, and a testimony and a willingness to go and talk to people around this world. And Father, I just ask that you give us that sense of urgency that we all need tonight. Father, we're going to give you all the glory. And Father, everything that we do, I'd ask that you would get the glory for it. Not us, not man. Father, I don't want any glory. I don't want anything out of any of this except for you to be glorified out of it, Father, that your name be magnified. We'd ask tonight, Father, that Psalm 85 and 2 Chronicles 7, 13 through 15, Father, that you would help us to follow that and get on our faces and turn from our wicked ways, Father, that you will, at that point, restore our land. Father, thank you for all that you've done with us and for us. And Father, I'd ask you to keep your hands upon each one of us this evening and help us to have a fruitful week and help us to go and find that one person, Lord. If it's one a day, if it's one an hour, if it's one a week, Father, help us to find that one person that needs you, that you've put in our paths. We'll give you all the glory, the praise, and the honor. In the mighty name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Good night, church.